A new twist tonight in connection with the criminal charges filed against a man for hitting Rudy Giuliani at a Staten Island ShopRite while he was campaigning for his son Andrew, candidate for the state's Republican nomination for governor. Now the New York City mayor is suggesting Rudy should be charged. On Sunday, Giuliani made it seem like he was lucky to be alive following the incident.
All of a sudden, I feel a shot on my back, like somebody shot me. Luckily, I didn't fall down. Lucky I'm a 78-year-old who's in pretty good shape, because if I wasn't, I'd have hit the ground and probably cracked my skull.
Well, then they released the tape, and the NYPD arrested 39-year-old Daniel Gill. Initially, he was charged with second-degree assault, a felony punishable by no less than 2 years and up to 7. But prosecutors ultimately reduced the charges to misdemeanor assault. 2 other misdemeanors, third-degree menacing and second-degree harassment, were added, according to court records. Gill was released from custody and ordered back to court in August. The security footage of the alleged assault paints a different picture than the one Giuliani described. In it, a man who had been presumed to be Gill can be seen walking up to the former mayor, who he then either pats or slaps on the back, and Giuliani barely moves after the encounter, far from appearing to be on the verge of a terrible fall. And today, New York City's Mayor Eric Adams questioned whether Giuliani should be charged for filing the report.
I looked at the video, and someone needs to remind former Mayor Giuliani that falsely reporting a crime is a crime. And from what he stated about being punched in the head, felt like a bullet, what he stated, there was a lot of creativity. And I think the district attorney he has the wrong person that he's investigating. When you look at the video, the guy basically walked by and patted him on the back. I don't know if he said congratulations. I don't know what he said to him, but it was clear that he was not punched in the head. It was clear that it didn't feel like a bullet. It was clear that he wasn't about to fall to the ground.
Adams went on to say that he would talk to the commissioner of the NYPD about possibly pursuing charges against Giuliani for falsely reporting a crime. Not long after the current mayor's remarks, Giuliani fired back in an interview with the New York Post, going on a profane tirade about Adams, calling him a scum and who doesn't know what he's talking about, telling the mayor to go F himself. Giuliani followed up by questioning whether the NYPD even trusts the mayor and accused Adams of being a bad cop while he was on the force. But would Gill still be facing more serious charges if not for the video? Adams seems to think so. He makes a fair point about the video. If it didn't exist, the group of Giuliani supporters might have backed up his claim and the more serious charges might have stuck. So, are they serious about charging Giuliani? And if so, is it appropriate for him to be talking to the NYPD about it? Joining me now is criminal defense attorney and former Manhattan prosecutor Jeremy Sallin. Jeremy, thank you very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. All right, so let me ask you first that question. Is it appropriate for the mayor to be talking to the NYPD about his thoughts on criminal charges?
Listen, everyone has their own thoughts and everyone has something to say. I would certainly warn the mayor in a time, or former mayor, in a time when we've seen horrible gun violence, to equate being slapped on the back, which is akin to what appears to be a pat, that referencing shooting or being shot is really inappropriate at best and sophomoric and horrible at worst. This is really a much ado about nothing. The mayor was at one time the leader of the city, and I would remind him again that he was once a strong, bold man.
But apart from reminding the former mayor, I want to talk about the current mayor and his comments about possibly investigating, like some legal analysis, on the possible investigation of Rudy Giuliani. Is that real?
I think that's more political than real. There's frustration there because Mayor Adams is really working hard to clean up New York, and we're being distracted by something that, frankly, has no place in the criminal justice system. Do I think that ultimately Mayor Giuliani would be prosecuted and charged? No. I've seen far more egregious and more serious offenses that are far more fact-specific, that really lay out the crime that the NYPD does not pursue. Yeah. Again, I think this is much ado about nothing. It's becoming a political problem.
Well, I think Giuliani overstated it. There's no question about that when you see the video. But I also can say that I think it does pose questions when the mayor, the current mayor, is saying he's going to be speaking with the NYPD about possible charges. I have always thought that would be inappropriate. for the mayor to be saying, I watched a video of this guy who is involved in some criminal investigation, and now I'm going to go and talk to the NYPD about what I think about it. I mean, that doesn't seem particularly appropriate, taking Giuliani out of this, right?
Ultimately, the mayor's going to say whatever he wants to say. It's the prosecutor or the district attorney's decision as to what is ultimately charged. And I would like to think, at least as right now is evidenced by the downgrading of charges, the Staten Island district attorney reviewed this video and saw this was not an appropriate offense to be charging this man with. That being said, it doesn't look like any crime was committed, at least superficially, from that video. Well, but the mayor can say what he wants to say, again, he's trying to keep New York safe.
Let me just challenge you on that, though, because we've now seen recently a lot of cases where there is a slight touching and someone gets charged with assault or a battery these days, right? Someone reports it, you have a complaining witness, and any inappropriate, any unwanted touching can be viewed as a criminal offense. And look, I don't support that in a lot of cases. I think we go too far with that in our current society. But this doesn't seem inconsistent with what's happening in a lot of cases, particularly ones that we see high profile in nature. Final word on that?
Yeah, you see that more in domestic situations where there's more of a mandatory arrest situation, where there's an allegation of that type of a touch. You don't see it as much here. And I would actually argue that there should be more thorough prosecution and investigation. We've seemed to have fallen backwards in the recent years in prosecuting crime. But, the Mayor Adams is going to say what he wants to say. It's a great story, a great narrative. But this is not a crime in terms of what happened to Mayor Giuliani. And I wouldn't waste NYPD resources to pursue false reporting an incident. I think I would let this go away and let's do our job, what we have to do in the city.
All right, we shall see. Jeremy Sound, thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.